The fluorescent lights of the Marriott Hotel in downtown Nashville hummed their familiar tune as Maria Gonzalez pushed her cleaning cart down the carpeted hallway of the 15th floor. At 43, she had been working the night shift for Spotless Solutions Cleaning Company for nearly 8 years, and every creak of the cart's wheels told the story of countless late nights spent making sure guests woke up to pristine rooms. The November rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating rivulets that caught the city lights below. Nashville's skyline twinkled like scattered diamonds, but Maria barely noticed anymore. She had learned to keep her head down, do her work efficiently, and get home to her small apartment in Antioch, where her 16-year-old daughter Carmen waited with homework questions and stories about her day at school. "Maria, you got the executive floor tonight," called out Janet Morrison, the floor supervisor, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been managing cleaning crews for over a decade. Janet was a stern woman in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that seemed to catalogue every dust particle and overlook detail. "The VIP suite too?" Maria asked, adjusting her rubber gloves as she prepared for what she knew would be a more demanding night than usual. "Especially the VIP suite. We got some big-shot country singer checking in tomorrow morning, and corporate wants everything perfect. I mean hospital clean perfect, you understand?" Maria nodded, though she rarely paid attention to which celebrities stayed at the hotel. To her, they were just another set of rooms to clean, another opportunity to do the job right and earn her paycheck. At $12. $50 an hour, every dollar mattered, especially with Carmen's college applications coming up and the dream of her daughter becoming the first in their family to attend university. The executive floor was quieter than usual, with most business travelers having checked out earlier in the day. Maria moved methodically through her routine, dusting surfaces, vacuuming carpets, replacing towels, and ensuring every mirror sparkled. She had developed a rhythm over the years, a dance of efficiency that allowed her to complete her work thoroughly while still making it home before Carmen left for school. As she approached the VIP suite at the end of the hall, Maria noticed something unusual. The door was slightly ajar, and warm light spilled out into the hallway. She paused, listening for voices or movement inside. Hotel protocol was clear: never enter an occupied room without permission, and always knock before entering any room, even if it appeared empty. She knocked softly. "Housekeeping," she called out in her accented English, the words familiar from years of repetition. "Come on in," came a voice from inside, warm and distinctly Texan. "I was actually hoping someone might come by." Maria hesitated. Guests rarely requested cleaning services at 11 p.m., and something in the man's voice suggested he might be in distress. She pushed the cart to the side and stepped carefully into the suite. The VIP suite was one of the hotel's finest, with a separate living area, a kitchenette, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the Cumberland River. But what caught Maria's attention immediately was the man sitting on the leather sofa, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking slightly. He was tall, probably in his early 70s, with silver hair and wearing what looked like expensive jeans and a white button-down shirt. Even in his distressed state, there was something distinguished about him, something that spoke of a life lived in the public eye. "Sir, are you okay?" Maria asked, her maternal instincts overriding her professional training to maintain distance from guests. The man looked up, and Maria saw tears in his eyes. His face was lined with age and experience, but there was something familiar about his features, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean for anyone to see me like this. I just got some difficult news, and I don't really have anyone to talk to right now." Maria's heart went out to him immediately. She had seen this kind of pain before, the kind that comes from loss and loneliness, and it transcended social boundaries. This man might be staying in a suite that cost more than she made in a month, but his grief was as real and raw as any she had witnessed. "Would you like some water?" she offered, noticing an empty glass on the coffee table beside him. "Or maybe I could call someone for you." He shook his head slowly. "No, there's no one to call. My wife passed away 2 years ago, and my kids, well, they're grown and have their own lives. I just learned that my best friend from childhood, the last person who really knew me before all this." He gestured vaguely around the luxurious suite. "He passed away this morning. Heart attack. Just like that." Maria felt a lump forming in her throat. She had lost her own mother 3 years ago, and she remembered the profound loneliness that came with losing someone who had known you your entire life. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said softly, setting down her cleaning supplies and taking a small step closer. "Losing a friend like that, it's like losing a piece of yourself." The man looked up at her with surprise, as if he hadn't expected such understanding from a hotel cleaning lady. "Yes," he said quietly, "that's exactly what it feels like. Tom and I grew up together in Poteet, Texas. We were best friends through high school, and even when my career took off and everything changed, he was always there. Always real with me, you know? Never treated me any different." Maria nodded, understanding the value of authentic relationships in a world that often felt superficial. "Those people are rare," she said. "The ones who see you for who you really are, not what you have or what you do." "Exactly." The man's voice cracked slightly. "And now he's gone, and I'm sitting here in this fancy hotel room, and I realize I don't have anyone left who knew me when I was just George from Poteet, dreaming about maybe playing music for a living." Something clicked in Maria's mind. George. The distinctive voice, the Texan accent, the mention of a music career. She'd seen his face on magazine covers in the grocery store checkout lines, heard his songs on the radio that Carmen sometimes played while doing homework. "You're George Strait," she said quietly, not as a question but as a gentle acknowledgement. He looked up at her with a mixture of surprise and resignation. "You know who I am?" "My daughter likes your music," Maria said simply, "but right now you're just a man who lost his friend. That's what matters." George studied her face for a long moment, and Maria could see him processing her words. In her 8 years of cleaning hotel rooms, she had learned to read people quickly, to understand when someone needed professional distance and when they needed human connection. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria. Maria Gonzalez." "Maria, would you mind sitting with me for a few minutes? I know you have work to do and I don't want to get you in trouble, but I don't want to be alone right now." Maria glanced toward the door, thinking of her other rooms to clean and Janet's expectations. But then she looked back at George's face, at the genuine pain and vulnerability there, and she made a decision that would change everything. "Of course," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "Tell me about Tom." For the next hour, George shared stories about his childhood friend. He talked about growing up in a small Texas town, about how Tom had been there for his first performance at a local honky-tonk, about how his friend had never asked for anything despite George's success, had never tried to use their friendship for personal gain. "He was a ranch hand his whole life," George said, his voice growing stronger as he talked. "Never married, loved horses more than people, I think. But he was the most honest person I ever knew. When everyone else was telling me what they thought I wanted to hear, Tom would tell me the truth." Maria listened intently, occasionally asking questions or sharing her own memories of her mother, creating a bridge of understanding between their very different worlds. She found herself genuinely moved by George's stories, by the picture he painted of a friendship that had endured despite fame and fortune. "He sounds like he was a wonderful friend," she said, when George finished describing Tom's last visit to one of his concerts. "And I think he would want you to remember the good times, not just the sadness of losing him." George nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "You're right. Tom would probably tell me to quit feeling sorry for myself and get back to what I love doing." "What do you love doing?" Maria asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Playing music, connecting with people through songs. It's the only thing that's ever made complete sense to me." He paused, studying her face. "What about you, Maria? What do you love doing?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in years. "I love taking care of people," she said after a moment, "making sure they're comfortable, that they have what they need. And I love watching my daughter grow up, seeing her become this amazing young woman who's so much smarter than I ever was." "I bet you're smarter than you think," George said with a slight smile, the first she had seen from him all evening. "It takes wisdom to know how to comfort someone you've never met before." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. It just takes caring about people. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the storm outside beginning to subside. Finally, George stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Maria, I want to do something," he said suddenly. "Tom always said I should do more to help people directly, not just through charity donations and benefit concerts. I've been thinking about starting a scholarship fund for kids who want to go to college, but can't afford it. Would you help me figure out how to do that?" Maria's heart skipped a beat. "I don't know anything about scholarships or funds," she said honestly. "But you know what it's like to want the best for your child, to work hard to make it possible. That's exactly the perspective I need." Before Maria could respond, she heard footsteps in the hallway and Janet's voice calling her name. "Maria, where are you? You've got 3 more rooms to finish before your shift ends." Maria's stomach dropped. She had been so focused on helping George that she had completely lost track of time. "I have to go," she said quickly, standing up. "My supervisor." "Of course," George said, understanding immediately. "Thank you, Maria. You've helped me more than you know." Maria hurried to gather her cleaning supplies, her mind racing with the realization that she had spent over an hour talking with one of the most famous country singers in the world instead of doing her job. As she reached the door, George called out to her, "Maria, wait. How can I reach you about the scholarship fund?" I don't know if that's a good idea," she said, glancing nervously toward the hallway, where Janet's voice was getting closer. "I really need this job." George pulled out his phone. "Give me your number. I'll call you tomorrow." Against her better judgment, Maria quickly recited her phone number, then hurried out of the suite with her cart, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. Janet appeared at the end of the hallway, her face set in a stern expression. "Maria, what were you doing in there? You're 45 minutes behind schedule." "The guest needed assistance," Maria said truthfully, though she knew it sounded like a weak excuse. "Assistance with what? You're a cleaning lady, not a concierge." Janet's voice carried a sharp edge that Maria had learned to recognize as a warning. "He was upset about something, and I just helped him for a few minutes." Janet's expression darkened. "You were in there for over an hour. I've been looking for you. Do you understand that we have a contract with this hotel, and part of that contract is providing efficient, professional service? Chatting with guests is not part of your job description." Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and fear. She had never been in trouble at work before, had always been one of the most reliable employees. "I'm sorry, Janet. It won't happen again." "You're right, it won't," Janet said coldly. "Finish your remaining rooms. We'll discuss this further in the morning." As Janet walked away, Maria felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. She had been so moved by George's grief, so touched by his trust in her, that she had forgotten the basic rule of her profession: maintain professional boundaries. Now she might lose the job she desperately needed. She worked through the remaining rooms in a daze, her mind replaying the conversation with George and wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. By the time she finished her shift and drove home through the empty Nashville streets, The sun was beginning to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Carmen was already awake when Maria arrived home, sitting at their small kitchen table with her algebra homework spread out in front of her. At 16, Carmen was everything Maria had hoped she would become: intelligent, ambitious, and determined to build a better life for herself. "Mom, you're later than usual," Carmen said, looking up from her textbook. "Everything okay?" Maria sat down across from her daughter, suddenly feeling the weight of the night's events. "I met someone interesting at work tonight," she said carefully. "Someone who's been through a lot of loss." Carmen studied her mother's face with the perceptive eyes of a teenager who had learned to read adult emotions. "You helped them, didn't you? Even though you weren't supposed to." Maria nodded, amazed as always by her daughter's intuition. "How did you know?" "Because that's who you are, Mom. You can't help yourself when someone's hurting." Carmen reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. "What happened?" Maria told her daughter about the encounter with George Strait, about his grief over losing his friend, and about the scholarship fund he had mentioned. She also shared her fears about Janet's reaction and the possibility of losing her job. Carmen listened intently, her expression growing more concerned as the story continued. "Mom, you could really get fired for this?" "I don't know," Maria admitted. "Maybe. Your supervisor was pretty angry. But you were just being kind to someone who needed help. That should count for something." Maria smiled at her daughter's optimism, though she knew the working world was rarely that understanding. "I hope so, Mija. I really hope so." As Carmen prepared for school, and Maria got ready for a few hours of sleep before her next shift, neither of them could have imagined how dramatically their lives were about to change. The phone number George had asked for was written on a scrap of paper in Maria's purse, and across town, the king of country was sitting in his suite, watching the sunrise and thinking about a cleaning lady who had shown him more genuine kindness than he had experienced in years. The storm outside had passed, but the real storm was just beginning. Maria woke up at 2 in the afternoon to the sound of her phone ringing. She had managed only 4 hours of sleep, but the jarring sound cut through her dreams like a blade. Groggily, she reached for the phone on her nightstand, expecting to see Carmen's school number or maybe a reminder about a dentist appointment. Instead, the screen showed unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Maria, this is George Strait. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." Suddenly, Maria was wide awake. The events of the previous night came flooding back, and she sat up in bed, running her free hand through her hair. No, it's fine. I work nights, so I sleep during the day." "Of course I should have thought of that. I'm sorry." George's voice was warm and alert, a stark contrast to the broken man she had comforted just hours earlier. "I wanted to call and thank you again for last night. I can't remember the last time someone listened to me like that, without wanting something in return." Maria felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. "It was nothing. Really. It wasn't nothing to me," George said firmly. "And I meant what I said about the scholarship fund. I've been thinking about it all morning, and I want to do this. I want to help kids like your daughter get the education they deserve." "Mr. Strait, I appreciate that, but I don't know if I'm the right person to help you with something like that. I'm just a cleaning lady. You're a mother who's working hard to give her daughter a better life. That makes you exactly the right person." George paused, and Maria could hear the conviction in his voice. "Would you be willing to meet with me later today? Maybe we could grab coffee and talk about this properly." Maria's mind raced. Meeting with George Strait away from the hotel felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. But the possibility of being involved in something that could help other families like hers was incredibly appealing. "I have to work tonight," she said slowly, "but I could meet you before my shift." "Perfect." Do you know the coffee shop on Music Row? The one with the guitars on the walls? I think so. The one near the recording studios. That's the one. How about 5 o'clock? Maria agreed, though she felt a growing sense of unease about the whole situation. After hanging up, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hand. Part of her was excited about the possibility of working on something meaningful, but another part worried about what would happen when Janet found out about her continued contact with a hotel guest. She spent the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation, changing clothes 3 times before settling on a simple black dress and cardigan. It was important to look professional, but she didn't want to appear to be trying too hard. At 4:30, she kissed Carmen goodbye and drove toward Music Row, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The coffee shop George had mentioned was a small, intimate place called the Listening Room, decorated with vintage guitars and photographs of famous musicians. It was the kind of place where record deals were made and songs were born, and Maria felt immediately out of place among the industry professionals and aspiring artists. She spotted George immediately, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, despite being indoors. He looked up as she approached, and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Maria, thank you for coming," he said, standing to greet her. "Please sit down. I've already ordered you a coffee. I hope that's okay." "That's very kind," Maria said. Sliding into the booth across from him, she noticed that several other patrons had glanced their way, but George seemed accustomed to the attention. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night," George began, removing his sunglasses so he could look at her directly. "About Tom, about second chances, about doing something meaningful with the time we have left. I want to establish a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, kids whose parents never had the opportunity to go to college themselves." Maria felt her heart speed up. "That sounds amazing, but I still don't understand how I could help with something like that." "You understand the struggle," George said simply. "You know what it's like to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet, to worry about how you're going to pay for your child's education. I need someone who can help me understand what these families really need, not just what some foundation board thinks they need." They spent the next hour discussing the scholarship fund in detail. George had clearly done his research, talking about endowments and selection criteria and partnership with local universities. Maria found herself caught up in his enthusiasm, contributing ideas about how to reach families who might not know such opportunities existed. "My daughter Carmen is so smart," Maria said, her voice filled with pride. "She wants to study business, maybe start her own company someday. But the cost of college, it's overwhelming. Even with financial aid, there are so many expenses." "That's exactly why this matters," George said, leaning forward intently. "Every kid deserves a chance to pursue their dreams, regardless of their parents' financial situation." They were so engrossed in their conversation that Maria almost didn't notice the time. At 6:15, she glanced at her watch and gasped. "Oh no, I'm supposed to be at work in 45 minutes. "I'll drive you," George offered immediately. "No, that's okay, I have my car. But thank you for this, for including me in something so important." As they said goodbye, George handed her a business card. "My personal number is on there. I'll have my attorney draw up the initial paperwork for the foundation, and I'd like you to review it. Your input matters to me." Maria drove to the hotel with her mind spinning. The conversation with George had been exhilarating, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was in over her head. She had never been involved in anything like a scholarship foundation, and the idea of reviewing legal documents felt overwhelming. She arrived at the hotel at 6:55, 5 minutes before her shift began. As she changed into her uniform in the employee locker room, she tried to push thoughts of the scholarship fund aside and focus on the work ahead. She had a job to do, and she couldn't afford to let her performance slip again. But as she reported to Janet for her room assignments, Maria could tell immediately that something was wrong. Janet's expression was even more severe than usual, and she was holding a manila folder that looked ominous. "Maria, I need to speak with you in my office," Janet said without preamble. Maria's stomach dropped. "Right now? Right now?" They walked to Janet's small office in silence, passing other cleaning staff who looked away as they passed. Maria had never been called to Janet's office before, and she knew it couldn't be good news. Janet closed the door behind them and gestured for Maria to sit in the chair across from her desk. She opened the manila folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. "I've been reviewing your performance over the past few months," Janet began, her voice professional but cold. "And while your work quality has generally been satisfactory, last night's incident has raised serious concerns about your professionalism and your ability to maintain appropriate boundaries with hotel guests." Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Janet, I can explain." "Let me finish," Janet interrupted. "I spoke with corporate this morning about what happened. They're very concerned about the liability issues involved when employees spend extended periods of time alone with guests, especially high-profile guests." "I was just helping someone who was upset," Maria said, hearing the desperation in her own voice. "That's not your job," Janet replied firmly. "Your job is to clean rooms efficiently and professionally. Last night, you spent over an hour in a guest's room, which delayed your other work and required another employee to cover your remaining rooms. This is unacceptable." Maria felt tears threatening to spill over. "It won't happen again, I promise." Janet studied her for a long moment. "I've been in this business for 15 years, Maria. I've seen good employees make bad decisions, and I've had to make difficult choices. You're a hard worker, and you've been reliable until now, but I can't have employees who don't understand professional boundaries." "Please," Maria whispered. "I need this job. My daughter is applying to colleges, and I can't afford to lose this income." "I'm sorry," Janet said, and for the first time her voice contained a hint of regret. "I have to let you go. Security will escort you out, and you'll receive your final paycheck by mail." The words hit Maria like a physical blow. She sat in stunned silence for a moment, unable to process what she was hearing. "You're firing me. I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately." "I'm sorry, Maria. I truly am." The next few minutes passed in a blur. Security arrived to escort her to her locker, where she gathered her few personal belongings, while other employees watched in uncomfortable silence. She handed over her uniform and her key card, and then she was walking through the hotel lobby toward the parking garage, unemployed for the first time in 8 years. Maria sat in her car for a long time, staring at the hotel entrance through the windshield. She thought about calling George, about telling him what had happened, but the idea made her feel even more humiliated. She had lost her job because she had tried to help him, and now she would have to explain to Carmen that their financial situation had just become much more precarious. The drive home felt endless. Nashville's evening traffic seemed to mock her, all these people going about their normal lives while hers had just fallen apart. She thought about the scholarship fund, about the excitement she had felt just hours earlier, and realized how naive she had been to think she could be part of something so far outside her world. Carmen was waiting for her when she arrived home, sitting at the kitchen table with her homework as always. But this time, she looked up immediately when Maria walked in, her expression concerned. "Mum, you're home early. What's wrong?" Maria sat down heavily across from her daughter, no longer able to hold back her tears. "I got fired." Carmen's face went pale. "What? Why?" Through her tears, Maria explained what had happened, the meeting with George, the coffee shop conversation, and finally, the termination. Carmen listened in stunned silence, occasionally reaching across the table to squeeze her mother's hand. "This is so unfair," Carmen said when Maria finished. "You were just being kind to someone who needed help. How can they fire you for that?" "I broke the rules," Maria said quietly. "I spent too much time with a guest instead of doing my job." "But you were helping him. That doesn't matter in the business world, Mija. There are rules, and I broke them." They sat in silence for a few minutes, both processing the magnitude of what had happened. Finally, Carmen spoke up, her voice determined despite her obvious worry. "What about the scholarship fund? Maybe Mr. Strait can help you find another job." Maria shook her head. "I can't ask him for that. I've already caused enough trouble." "Mom, you didn't cause trouble. You showed compassion to someone who was hurting. That's not something to be ashamed of. Tell that to the people who pay my salary," Maria said bitterly. That night, Maria lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with worry about their financial situation. She had some savings, but not enough to cover more than a few weeks of expenses. She would need to find another job quickly, and she wondered if the hotel would give her a negative reference. Around midnight, her phone rang. The caller ID showed George's number. "Maria, I heard what happened," he said without preamble. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "How did you find out?" Maria asked, though she wasn't really surprised that word had gotten back to him. "I called the hotel to thank you again for last night, and they told me you were no longer employed there. I can't believe they fired you for showing kindness to a guest." "It's not your fault," Maria said, though part of her did blame him for putting her in that position. "I made a choice to spend time with you instead of doing my job. A choice that showed incredible humanity. Look, I want to make this right. I want to help you find another job, and I want to make sure you're compensated for what you've lost." "I don't want charity," Maria said quickly. "It's not charity. It's justice. You lost your job because you helped me during one of the darkest moments of my life. The least I can do is help you get back on your feet." Maria felt a complex mixture of gratitude and pride warring in her chest. She needed help desperately, but accepting it from George felt like admitting defeat. "I don't know," she said finally. "Think about it," George said gently. "And Maria, don't give up on the scholarship fund. I still need your help with that now more than ever." After hanging up, Maria stared at the phone in her hand. Her life had been turned upside down in less than 24 hours, and she wasn't sure which way was up anymore. But as she thought about George's words, about the scholarship fund and the possibility of helping other families like hers, she felt a small spark of hope ignite in her chest. Maybe losing her job wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was just the beginning. Maria woke up the next morning to the sound of rain against her bedroom window and the immediate crushing weight of unemployment. For a moment, she had forgotten about the previous day's events, but reality crashed back over her like a cold wave. She had no job, no income, and no clear path forward. She lay in bed for a few extra minutes, listening to Carmen moving around the apartment, getting ready for school. Her daughter had been remarkably strong the night before, but Maria knew she was worried. Carmen had been looking forward to starting college applications, and now their financial situation was more uncertain than ever. Finally, Maria forced herself to get up and face the day. She found Carmen in the kitchen, making breakfast and organizing her school supplies with the same methodical care she brought to everything in her life. "Morning, Mom," Carmen said, looking up with a forced smile. "I made you coffee." "Thank you, Mija." Maria accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," Carmen lied, and Maria could see the worry lines around her daughter's eyes. "What's your plan for today?" It was a simple question, but Maria didn't have a good answer. She had never been unemployed before, had never had to look for work while dealing with the stress of immediate financial pressure. "I'll start looking for jobs online," she said. "Maybe call some other cleaning services." Carmen studied her mother's face for a moment. "What about Mr. Strait? You said he wanted to help." I can't ask him for a job, Carmen. That would be too much. But he offered to help, didn't he? And you said he still wants you to work on the scholarship fund. Maria sipped her coffee, considering. George had seemed genuine in his offer to help, but the idea of accepting assistance from someone she barely knew felt uncomfortable. She had always prided herself on being self-sufficient, on taking care of her family without depending on others. "I'll think about it," she said finally. After Carmen left for school, Maria sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop, searching job posting websites. The cleaning industry in Nashville was competitive, and most positions paid less than what she had been making at the hotel. She filled out several applications, but without a reference from her most recent employer, she wasn't optimistic about her chances. Around noon, her phone rang. George's name appeared on the screen. "Maria, I hope I'm not bothering you," he said when she answered. "I wanted to check on you and see how you're doing." "I'm looking for work," she said simply. "Good. I've been making some calls too. I have a friend who runs a high-end cleaning service for offices and medical facilities. They pay well, and they're always looking for experienced, reliable people. Would you be interested in an interview?" Maria felt a surge of hope mixed with suspicion. "You didn't tell them about what happened at the hotel, did you?" "I told them you were an excellent worker who left your previous job to pursue new opportunities. That's all." "That's not exactly the truth. It's not exactly a lie either," George said gently. "Sometimes the truth is more complicated than what shows up on a job application." Maria found herself smiling, despite her circumstances. "When would the interview be?" "This afternoon, if you're available. The owner's name is Patricia Williams, and she's expecting your call." After hanging up with George, Maria called Patricia Williams and scheduled an interview for 2 p.m. She spent the next hour preparing, researching the company and practicing answers to potential questions. It felt good to have something concrete to focus on, a next step to take. Patricia Williams' office was in a modern building in the Gulch, Nashville's business district. The offices of Premier Cleaning Solutions were clean and professional, with awards and certifications displayed on the walls. Patricia herself was a woman in her 50s, with short grey hair and a firm handshake. "George Strait speaks very highly of you," Patricia said as they sat down in her office. "He says you're extremely reliable and detail-oriented." "He's very kind," Maria replied, still feeling strange about George's intervention in her life. "I've been in the cleaning industry for 8 years, and I take pride in my work. Tell me about your experience at the hotel." Maria had prepared for this question, but it was still difficult to answer without mentioning the circumstances of her departure. "I worked there for 8 years on the night shift. I was responsible for cleaning executive floors and VIP suites. I received positive performance reviews and was never disciplined for my work quality." "Why did you leave?" "I felt it was time for a change," Maria said, hating how the words sounded in her mouth. "I'm looking for new challenges and opportunities to grow." Patricia studied her for a moment, and Maria had the feeling she could see through the careful phrasing. But instead of pressing for details, Patricia nodded. "We specialize in medical facilities and high-end office buildings. The work is demanding, but we pay $16 an hour to start with opportunities for advancement. We also offer health insurance and paid time off." $16 an hour was more than Maria had ever made, and health insurance would be a huge relief. She tried not to let her desperation show on her face. "That sounds wonderful," she said. "I'd like to offer you a trial period," Patricia said. 2 weeks to see how you fit with our team and our standards. If it works out, we'll make it permanent." Maria accepted immediately, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She would start the following Monday, which gave her the weekend to prepare and adjust to the idea of working days instead of nights. As she drove home from the interview, Maria called George to thank him. "I'm so glad it worked out," he said. and she could hear the genuine relief in his voice. "Patricia is a good person, and she runs a solid business. You'll do well there." "I don't know how to thank you," Maria said. "You can thank me by not giving up on the scholarship fund. I've been meeting with lawyers and accountants all morning, and I really need your perspective on how to structure this thing." Maria felt her excitement returning. Despite everything that had happened, the scholarship fund still represented something meaningful, something that could make a real difference in families like hers. "I'd like that," she said. "When would you like to meet?" "How about this weekend? Maybe we could visit some of the schools where we might want to offer scholarships, get a feel for what these kids really need." "That sounds perfect." That evening, Maria told Carmen about the job offer and the continued work on the scholarship fund. Her daughter's face lit up with excitement and relief. "Mom, this is amazing. $16 an hour is so much better than what you were making before." "I know, and the health insurance will help a lot too." Maria paused, studying her daughter's face. "Carmen, I want to ask you something. Would you be willing to meet Mr. Strait? He's interested in hearing from someone your age about what college costs really mean to families like ours." Carmen's eyes widened. "You want me to meet George Strait?" "Only if you're comfortable with it. I know it might seem strange, but he really wants to understand how to help students like you." "Are you kidding? Of course I want to meet him. And Mom." Carmen reached across the table to squeeze her mother's hand. "I'm proud of you. You lost your job because you showed kindness to someone who needed it, and now look what's happening. Good things really do come to good people." Saturday morning arrived clear and bright, a stark contrast to the stormy weather that had marked the beginning of Maria's ordeal. She and Carmen drove to meet George at the Nashville Public Library downtown, where they had arranged to discuss the scholarship fund before visiting a few local high schools. George was waiting for them in the main lobby, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, his famous face partially hidden behind sunglasses and a baseball cap. When he saw them approaching, he stood up with a warm smile. "You must be Carmen," he said, extending his hand to Maria's daughter. "Your mother has told me so much about you." Carmen shook his hand, her usual confidence slightly shaken by meeting someone she had only seen on magazine covers. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Strait. Thank you for helping my mom." "Your mom helped me first," George replied, "and please call me George." They found a quiet corner of the library where George spread out papers and folders on a table. He had clearly been busy since their last conversation, with detailed plans for the scholarship fund and legal documents outlining its structure. "I've decided to call it the Tom Patterson Memorial Scholarship," George explained. "After my friend who passed away, he would have loved the idea of helping kids get an education." For the next 2 hours, they discussed the details of the scholarship program. George wanted to start with $500,000 from his own funds, enough to provide full scholarships for 20 students per year. The scholarships would cover tuition, room and board, and books for 4 years at any accredited college or university. "The selection criteria are what I really need help with," George said, looking between Maria and Carmen. "I want to make sure we're reaching the kids who need it most, but also the ones who are most likely to succeed." Carmen, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "What about requiring community service? Not just grades, but showing that someone cares about helping others?" George's face lit up. "That's exactly the kind of thinking I need." "What else?" "Maybe require an essay about how they plan to give back to their community after college," Maria suggested. "So it's not just about individual success, but about creating a cycle of helping others." They spent the rest of the morning visiting 3 different high schools in Nashville, talking to guidance counselors and administrators about the challenges their students faced in pursuing higher education. At each school, the story was the same. Bright, motivated students whose families simply couldn't afford college costs, even with financial aid. The gap between what financial aid covers and what college actually costs is huge, explained Mrs. Rodriguez, a guidance counselor at a school in an economically disadvantaged neighborhood. We have kids working 20 hours a week just to help their families pay rent, and they're still maintaining 3-5 GPAs. They deserve a chance. As they drove from school to school, George listened intently to the stories they heard, asking thoughtful questions and taking detailed notes. Maria found herself impressed not just by his generosity, but by his genuine desire to understand the issues involved. "This is more complex than I realized," George admitted as they finished their visits. "It's not just about tuition money. These kids need support systems, mentoring, help navigating the whole college experience." "Maybe the scholarship could include a mentorship component," Carmen suggested. "Pair each recipient with a successful professional who can provide guidance. Or require recipients to mentor younger students in their communities," Maria added. "Create a network of support and inspiration." George pulled out his phone and began making notes. "These are brilliant ideas. I want to incorporate all of this into the program." As the day wound down, George insisted on taking them to dinner at a quiet restaurant where they could continue their discussion. Maria felt slightly uncomfortable with the attention they attracted. Several patrons recognized George and stared at their table throughout the meal. But George seemed oblivious to it, completely focused on their conversation about the scholarship fund. "I have something to ask both of you," George said as they finished their dessert. "I want you to be part of this scholarship program officially. Maria, I'd like you to serve on the selection committee and help oversee the mentoring component. And Carmen, I'd love for you to be one of our first scholarship recipients." Carmen's fork clattered onto her plate. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You're exactly the kind of student this scholarship is designed to help, and your ideas today have been invaluable. Plus, having you involved from the beginning would help us understand what works and what doesn't from a student's perspective." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "George, this is too much. We can't accept—" "Yes, you can," George interrupted gently. "Maria, you lost your job because you took time to help me through one of the darkest nights of my life. The least I can do is help ensure your daughter gets the education she deserves." "But what about the selection process? Shouldn't there be applications and interviews?" "There will be for all the other scholarships, but this first one, this is personal. Carmen has already shown me that she has the character and intelligence we're looking for. Consider it a pilot program." Carmen looked at her mother with tears in her eyes. "Mom, this means I can really go to college. I can study business like I've always dreamed." Maria struggled with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to accept this incredible gift with gratitude, but another part felt like they were accepting charity, becoming dependent on someone else's kindness in a way that made her uncomfortable. "I need some time to think about this," she said finally. "Of course," George said, "take all the time you need, but Maria, I want you to know that this isn't charity. This is partnership. I need your help to make this scholarship program work, and your insights are invaluable. You'd be earning every penny." On the drive home, Carmen was quiet, processing everything that had happened. Finally, as they pulled into their apartment complex, she spoke up. "Mom, I know this feels weird because it's happening so fast, but Mr. Strait, George, he really does need our help. And we need his help too. That doesn't make us weak or dependent. It makes us smart." Maria parked the car and sat in silence for a moment, her hands still gripping the steering wheel. "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from watching you," Carmen said simply. "You taught me that sometimes accepting help is the strongest thing you can do, especially when it means you can help other people too." That night, Maria lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened over the past few days. A week ago, she had been a hotel cleaning lady, living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about how to afford her daughter's college education. Now she was unemployed, but starting a better job on Monday, and her daughter had been offered a full scholarship to college by one of the most famous musicians in the world. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in movies, not to women like her who spent their nights cleaning hotel rooms and their days worrying about bills. But as she thought about the conversations they'd had with the high school counselors, about all the students who needed help pursuing their dreams, she realized that this wasn't really about her and Carmen anymore. This was about creating something bigger than themselves, something that could change lives and break cycles of poverty and limited opportunity. If George Strait was willing to trust her with that responsibility, if he valued her perspective enough to make her a partner in this endeavor, then maybe she needed to trust herself too. She picked up her phone and sent George a text message. "We're in. Thank you for believing in us." His response came back within minutes. "Thank you for helping me honor Tom's memory in the best possible way. Tomorrow we change some lives." As Maria finally drifted off to sleep, she thought about Tom Patterson, the childhood friend whose death had started this whole chain of events. She had never met him, but she felt like she understood him through George's stories. He had been the kind of person who valued authenticity and kindness, who would have approved of what they were trying to do. "Thank you, Tom," she whispered into the darkness. "This one's for all the kids who deserve a chance." Monday morning marked the beginning of a new chapter in Maria's life. She arrived at Premier Cleaning Solutions at 6 a.m., dressed in the company's crisp navy blue uniform and feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The building she would be cleaning was a state-of-the-art medical facility, and the standards were higher than anything she had experienced at the hotel. Patricia Williams introduced her to her new team, 4 other women who had been with the company for years and took obvious pride in their work. Unlike the hotel, where cleaning staff worked largely in isolation, this job required coordination and teamwork. "Maria will be working with you on the surgical suites," Patricia explained to Sandra, the team leader. "These rooms require absolute perfection. Any oversight could impact patient safety." Sandra, a woman in her 40s with graying temples and kind eyes, showed Maria through the facility. The surgical suites were gleaming spaces filled with expensive equipment that had to be cleaned with specialized techniques and hospital-grade disinfectants. "It's demanding work," Sandra explained as they moved through the rooms. "But it's important work. We're part of the healthcare team, even if most people don't think of it that way." Maria found herself energized by the responsibility. Each room they cleaned would be used to save lives, and her attention to detail could literally make the difference between health and infection for patients. It was cleaning work, but it was cleaning work with purpose and meaning. The day flew by, and Maria was surprised to discover that she genuinely enjoyed the collaborative nature of the job. At the hotel, she had worked alone through the night, rarely interacting with colleagues. Here, the team worked together to ensure every surface was spotless, every piece of equipment properly sanitized. "You did good today," Sandra said as their shift ended. "Patricia was right about you. You pay attention to details." "Thank you. I really want to do well here." "You will. I can tell." That evening, Maria arrived home to find Carmen at the kitchen table, surrounded by college brochures and application materials. Her daughter looked up with a bright smile. "How was the first day?" "Good. Really good, actually. Different from the hotel, but in a positive way." Maria sat down across from Carmen. "What's all this?" "College applications. I figured if I'm really going to get the scholarship, I should start applying to schools I actually want to attend, not just ones I thought we could afford." Maria felt a pang of emotion looking at the brochures. Universities like Vanderbilt, University of Tennessee, even some out-of-state schools that Carmen had only dreamed about before. "Have you heard from George today?" Carmen asked. "He texted me this afternoon. He wants to meet tomorrow evening to discuss the scholarship selection process. Are you nervous about working with him on this?" Maria considered the question. "A little. I still can't quite believe this is real, you know. A week ago, I was just trying to keep my job, and now I'm helping establish a scholarship fund. Mom, you deserve this. You've worked so hard for so long, and you've always put other people first. Maybe it's time to let someone help you for a change." The next evening, Maria met George at his attorney's office in downtown Nashville. The law firm occupied the top floor of a gleaming high-rise, with panoramic views of the city and conference rooms that looked like they belonged in a magazine. George was already there when Maria arrived, sitting at a massive mahogany table with 2 lawyers and an accountant. Despite the formal setting, he greeted her with the same warmth she remembered from their first meeting. "Maria, thank you for coming. I want you to meet David Chen, my attorney, and Susan Miller, who specializes in charitable foundations." Maria shook hands with both professionals, feeling slightly intimidated by their expensive suits and confident demeanor. But as they began discussing the scholarship fund, she realized that George had included her not as a token presence, but as a genuine partner whose input was valued. "We've structured the foundation to provide maximum impact while ensuring long-term sustainability," David explained, spreading documents across the table. "The initial funding of $500,000 will be invested to generate ongoing income, allowing us to provide scholarships in perpetuity. What Maria and I want to focus on is the selection process," George said. "We want to make sure we're identifying students who not only have academic potential, but who will use their education to make a positive impact in their communities." For the next 2 hours, they worked through the details of the application process. Students would need to maintain a 3.0 GPA, demonstrate financial need, and write essays about their career goals and plans for community service. Most importantly, they would need recommendations from teachers or community leaders who could speak to their character and potential. "I'd like to add one more requirement," Maria said, feeling bold enough to make suggestions. "Applicants should have work experience, even if it's just part-time or volunteer work. I want kids who understand the value of hard work and responsibility." "Excellent idea," Susan said, making notes. "That requirement will help us identify students who are already demonstrating maturity and commitment." As the meeting progressed, Maria found herself becoming more comfortable with the process, more confident in her ability to contribute meaningfully to the scholarship program. These lawyers and accountants might have more education than she did, but she had something equally valuable: real-world experience with the challenges facing families like hers. "There's one more thing I want to discuss," George said, as the meeting wound down. "The scholarship announcement. I'd like to hold a press conference next week to introduce the Tom Patterson Memorial Scholarship to the public." Maria felt a flutter of anxiety. A press conference? Nothing too overwhelming, just local media, maybe some education reporters. "I want people to know about this opportunity, and I want them to understand the inspiration behind it." "Do I need to be there?" "I'd like you to be there if you're comfortable with it. You bring credibility to this program that I can't provide on my own." Maria's mind raced. The idea of being in front of cameras and reporters felt terrifying, but she understood George's point. A scholarship program announced by a wealthy celebrity might seem like a publicity stunt, but if it included a working mother who understood the struggles these families faced, it would carry more weight. "I'll do it," she said, surprising herself with her decisiveness. "Are you sure? I don't want to pressure you." "I'm sure. If it helps more families learn about this opportunity, then it's worth it." The press conference was scheduled for the following Friday at the Nashville Public Library. As the week progressed, Maria found herself growing increasingly nervous about the media attention. She had never been on television before, had never spoken in front of more than a few people at once. Carmen, however, was excited about the whole thing. "Mom, you're going to be great. Just talk about why this matters to families like ours. What if I say something wrong? What if I embarrass George or hurt the scholarship program?" "You won't. You know more about this than anyone else in that room will. Just be yourself." Thursday evening, George called to check on her preparation. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" "I think so. I'm nervous, but I'm ready." "Good. I've prepared some talking points, but mostly I just want you to speak from the heart about why this scholarship matters." "George, can I ask you something? Why is this so important to you? I mean, I know about your friend Tom, but you could have honored his memory in a lot of different ways." George was quiet for a moment before answering. "Because I've been incredibly fortunate in my life, and I've reached an age where I'm thinking about legacy. What do I want to be remembered for? Tom used to tell me that talent was a gift, but what you do with it is a choice. I want to choose to help kids who have talent but haven't had the opportunities I've had." That's beautiful. It's also practical. This country needs educated, motivated young people who understand the value of hard work and giving back. The students we help today will be the leaders of tomorrow. Friday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching Maria's mood as she prepared for the press conference. She had chosen a simple black dress and blazer, professional but not trying too hard. Carmen hugged her before leaving for school. "I'm proud of you, Mom, no matter what happens today." The library's main conference room was set up with a podium, microphones and chairs, arranged for about 30 people. When Maria arrived, there were already several reporters present, along with representatives from local schools and community organizations. George was there early, looking comfortable and confident in his element. He greeted Maria with a reassuring smile. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," she admitted. "That's normal. The fact that you're nervous shows how much you care about doing this right." At exactly 10 a.m., George stepped up to the podium and began speaking. He talked about his friendship with Tom Patterson, about the importance of education, and about the scholarship program's goals. Then he introduced Maria. "I want you to meet Maria Gonzalez, who will be serving as our Director of Community Outreach. Maria understands the challenges facing working families better than anyone, and her insights have been invaluable in developing this program." Maria stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She looked out at the faces in the room, reporters with notebooks and cameras, educators, community leaders, and for a moment her mind went blank. Then she thought about Carmen, about all the students they had met at the high schools, about families like hers who worked hard but still struggled to afford their children's dreams. "My name is Maria Gonzalez," she began, her voice stronger than she had expected. 6 months ago, I was working as a hotel cleaning lady, worrying about how I was going to pay for my daughter's college education. I never imagined I would be standing here today, helping to launch a scholarship program that will change lives." She talked about meeting George, about their visits to local schools, about the incredible students they had encountered who deserved a chance to pursue their dreams. As she spoke, her nervousness faded, replaced by passion for the cause they were promoting. "The Tom Patterson Memorial Scholarship isn't just about money," she continued. "It's about believing in young people, investing in their potential, and creating a cycle of giving back that will strengthen our communities for generations to come." When she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Several reporters raised their hands with questions, and Maria found herself answering them with confidence and clarity. "Ms. Gonzalez, what qualifications do you have to oversee a scholarship program?" asked one reporter. "I have the qualification of being a mother who has struggled to provide opportunities for her child," Maria replied. "I understand what these families need because I am these families. After the press conference, George pulled her aside. "You were incredible up there. Natural, authentic, compelling. Tom would have loved seeing you advocate for these kids. Thank you for believing I could do this. Thank you for proving me right." As they left the library together, Maria felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had stepped outside her comfort zone and discovered strengths she didn't know she possessed. More importantly, she had helped launch something that would genuinely make a difference in young people's lives. That evening, Carmen called her from school, having heard about the press conference from friends. "Mom, you were on the news. My teacher showed the story to our class, and everyone was talking about how amazing you were." "It feels surreal," Maria admitted, "but also really good, like I'm finally doing something that matters." "You've always done things that matter, Mom. Now other people are just noticing." As Maria prepared for bed that night, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 2 weeks. She had lost a job, found a better one, and become part of something larger than herself. She thought about Tom Patterson, the man she had never met but whose friendship had set all of this in motion. Tomorrow, the scholarship applications would go live on the Foundation's website. Within a week, they would start receiving applications from students across Tennessee, young people with dreams and potential who just needed someone to believe in them. Maria smiled as she turned off the light. She couldn't wait to meet them. 3 months after the press conference, Maria stood in the conference room of Premier Cleaning Solutions, looking at a wall covered with scholarship applications. What had started as an ambitious idea had become an overwhelming success. They had received over 800 applications from students across Tennessee, each one representing a young person with dreams and potential. "We're going to need help reviewing all of these," Maria said to George, who was sitting at the table with reading glasses perched on his nose, carefully studying an application essay. "Good problem to have," George replied, not looking up from the papers in front of him. "This girl from Memphis wants to become a pediatric nurse because her little brother has cerebral palsy. Listen to this essay." George read aloud a passage about determination and service that brought tears to Maria's eyes. Over the past weeks, they had read hundreds of similar stories, students who worked multiple jobs to help support their families while maintaining excellent grades, young people who volunteered at homeless shelters and food banks despite having very little themselves, teenagers who had overcome significant personal challenges and wanted to use their education to help others facing similar struggles. "It's going to be impossible to choose just 20, Maria said, settling into the chair beside him. "Then maybe we don't choose just 20. Maria looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" George set down the application he had been reading and pulled out his phone. "I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The response to this scholarship program has been incredible, but it's also shown me how much need there is out there. I want to expand the program." "How much expansion are you talking about?" "Double it. 40 scholarships this year, with plans to keep growing." George's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm Maria had come to recognize when he was passionate about something. "I've been talking to some other artists, some business leaders in Nashville. They want to contribute. This could become something much bigger than what we originally planned." Maria felt a familiar flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. "That would be amazing, but it would also mean a lot more work. We'd need staff, systems, infrastructure. Which is why I want to offer you a full-time position as Executive Director of the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation," George said, his expression serious. "Salary, benefits, the whole package. You'd be in charge of running the day-to-day operations of what I think could become one of the most important scholarship programs in the Southeast." Maria stared at him, speechless. In her wildest dreams, she had never imagined going from hotel cleaning lady to executive director of a major foundation in less than 6 months. "George, I don't have the background for something like that. I don't have a college degree. I don't have experience running organizations. You have something better, George said firmly. You have integrity, intelligence, and a deep understanding of the people we're trying to help. You can learn the technical stuff. Hell, we'll hire people to handle the technical stuff. What we need is someone who can keep this program focused on its mission and make sure we're really making a difference in students' lives. I need to think about this. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Maria, I want you to know that this offer isn't charity or pity. You've proven over the past few months that you're exactly the right person for this job. That evening, Maria discussed the offer with Carmen over dinner at their small kitchen table. Carmen's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Mum, you have to take it. This is your chance to do something incredible." "But what if I'm not qualified? What if I fail? What if you succeed?" Carmen countered. "What if you help hundreds of kids go to college who wouldn't have had that chance otherwise? Isn't that worth the risk?" Maria looked at her daughter, amazed as always by her wisdom and perspective. At 17, Carmen had grown into a poised, articulate young woman who would be starting college in the fall on a full scholarship from the foundation. More importantly, she had developed a deep commitment to community service, volunteering at a local elementary school and helping organize fundraisers for underprivileged students. "You really think I can do this?" "I know you can do this. Mum, I've watched you over the past few months and you've been incredible. You understand these students because you've lived their lives. You care about them in a way that some executive with an MBA never could." Over the weekend, Maria visited the schools where they had first researched the scholarship program. She talked to guidance counselors and administrators about the impact the foundation was already having, about students who had already received early notifications of their scholarship awards. "Maria, you can't imagine what this means to these kids," said Mrs. Rodriguez, the guidance counselor at the economically disadvantaged school they had visited months earlier. "We have students who were planning to skip college entirely because they couldn't afford it, and now they're applying to their dream schools. You've changed the trajectory of their entire lives." "It's not just me," Maria protested. "It's Mr. Strait's generosity and vision. But it's your heart that's made this program what it is. These kids trust you because they know you understand their struggles. That matters more than you realize." By Sunday evening, Maria had made her decision. She called George and accepted the position as executive director of the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good," George replied. "If you weren't scared, I'd be worried that you weren't taking this seriously enough. But Maria, I have complete confidence in you. You're going to do amazing things." The transition from cleaning medical facilities to running a foundation was surreal and challenging. Maria's new office was in a renovated building in the heart of Nashville's non-profit district, with windows overlooking the city and a view of the Cumberland River in the distance. Patricia Williams had been incredibly understanding about Maria's career change, even offering to hire Carmen for a summer job to help with college expenses. "You were too good for cleaning anyway," Patricia had said with a smile. "Go change the world." The foundation's staff grew quickly. George hired an experienced program manager, an accountant, and an administrative assistant, but he made it clear that Maria was in charge of the vision and direction of the scholarship program. "The most important decision we make," Maria told the staff in their first team meeting, "is which students we choose to support. Every scholarship we award should go to someone who will use their education to make a positive impact in their community." The selection process took 6 weeks and involved reviewing essays, conducting interviews, and checking references. Maria personally interviewed 50 finalists, and each conversation reinforced her belief in the power of education to transform lives. There was James from rural East Tennessee, whose family had lost their farm but who wanted to study agricultural science to help other farming families adapt to changing economic conditions. There was Aaliyah from Memphis, who had been in foster care since age 12 and wanted to become a social worker to help other children in the system. There was Miguel from Nashville, who had immigrated from Guatemala as a child and wanted to study law to help other immigrant families navigate the legal system. "These kids are going to change the world," Maria told George after completing the interviews. "They already are," George replied, "just by pursuing their dreams despite the obstacles they've faced." The scholarship award ceremony was held at the Ryman Auditorium, Nashville's most historic venue. 40 students from across Tennessee attended with their families, and Maria felt overwhelming pride as she watched them walk across the stage to receive their awards. Carmen was among the recipients, having been selected through the same rigorous process as every other scholarship winner. When her name was called, Maria felt tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter cross the stage with confidence and grace. "Ladies and gentlemen," George said from the podium as the ceremony concluded, "I want you to meet the future leaders of Tennessee and beyond. These students represent the best of what our state has to offer: intelligence, determination, and a commitment to serving others." The audience erupted in applause, and Maria looked out at the sea of faces: students, families, community leaders, media representatives, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. After the ceremony, there was a reception where Maria had the chance to meet the families of scholarship recipients. Story after story confirmed what she had known from the beginning. These scholarships weren't just changing individual lives, they were transforming entire families and communities. "Ms. Gonzalez," said a woman whose daughter had received one of the scholarships, "I wanted to thank you personally. My daughter has been working 2 jobs since she was 15 to help pay our family's bills, and she was going to skip college to keep working. This scholarship means she can pursue her dreams of becoming a teacher." Similar conversations happened throughout the evening, and Maria found herself moved to tears multiple times by the gratitude and hope she encountered. As the evening wound down, George found her on the Ryman's backstage area, looking out at the empty auditorium. "Quite a night," he said, joining her at the railing. "I keep thinking about Tom," Maria said, "about how he'd feel knowing that his memory is helping all these young people pursue their dreams." "He'd be proud," George said quietly. "He always believed that the measure of a life wasn't what you accumulated, but what you gave away." Tonight, his legacy lives on in 40 brilliant young people who will go on to help countless others. They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, processing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. Then George spoke again. "Maria, I have something to tell you. I've been keeping track of the applications we've received for next year's scholarships, and we're already at over 200. I think it's time to take this national." Maria turned to look at him, surprised. "National? Why should Tennessee kids be the only ones to benefit from this program? There are deserving students all across the country who need these opportunities." "That would be a massive undertaking." "It would be, but I think we're ready for it. More importantly, I think you're ready for it." Maria considered the implications of expanding the program nationally. It would mean more staff, more funding, more complexity in every aspect of their operations, but it would also mean helping thousands more students pursue their dreams. "How many scholarships are we talking about?" "I'm thinking we start with 200 the first year, with a goal of reaching 500 annually within 5 years. That's incredible, George, but it's also overwhelming. The best things usually are." As they left the Ryman together, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been fired from her job for showing compassion to a grieving stranger. Tonight, She was the executive director of a foundation that was changing lives across Tennessee and preparing to expand nationwide. Carmen was waiting for her in the lobby, still wearing her scholarship recipient medallion and beaming with pride. "Mom, can you believe all of this? Can you believe what you've built?" "What we've built," Maria corrected. "None of this would have happened without you encouraging me to take risks and believe in myself. And none of it would have happened if you hadn't been the kind of person who stops to help someone in pain, even when it might cost you your job." As they drove home through the quiet Nashville streets, Maria reflected on the chain of events that had led to this night. A man's grief, a moment of human connection, a lost job, and an impossible dream had somehow combined to create something larger than any of them had imagined. "Carmen," she said as they pulled into their apartment complex, "what do you think about me accepting Mr. Strait's offer to take the foundation national?" Carmen was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think Tom Patterson would tell you to do it," she said finally. "I think he'd say that if you have the opportunity to help more people, you have the responsibility to take it. Even if it's scary, especially if it's scary. The best opportunities usually are." That night, Maria lay in bed thinking about the future. Tomorrow, she would call George and tell him yes, they should expand the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation nationally. There would be challenges and setbacks, moments of doubt, and overwhelming responsibility. But there would also be thousands of students whose lives would be transformed by the opportunity to pursue their dreams. She thought about the cleaning lady who had comforted a grieving stranger in a hotel suite just 6 months ago, and she marveled at how far that woman had traveled, not just professionally, but personally. From someone who cleaned up after others, to someone who helped build dreams, from someone who accepted limitations, to someone who refused to accept them for herself or the students she served. As she drifted off to sleep, Maria's last thought was of Tom Patterson, the man she had never met, but whose friendship had set everything in motion. Tomorrow, she would begin working to honor his memory on a national scale, ensuring that his legacy of authenticity and service would touch lives across the country. The circle was complete, but the journey was just beginning. 2 years later, Maria stood on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, looking out at an audience of 2,400 people who had gathered for the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation's first National Scholarship Awards ceremony. In the past 2 years, the foundation had awarded scholarships to over 800 students from all 50 states, and the impact had exceeded even George's ambitious vision. "When I first met George Strait," Maria said into the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the historic venue, "I was just a hotel cleaning lady trying to comfort a man who had lost his best friend. I never could have imagined that moment of human connection would lead to this, a foundation that has now helped over 800 students across America pursue their college dreams." The audience erupted in applause, and Maria could see George in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside him sat Carmen, now a junior at Vanderbilt University studying business and nonprofit management, preparing to join the foundation full-time after graduation. "The Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation has grown beyond our wildest expectations," Maria continued, "but our mission remains the same, to provide opportunities for hard-working students who understand the value of education and the importance of giving back to their communities." As she spoke about the foundation's impact, the future doctors and teachers and engineers who were now in college thanks to the scholarship program, the community service projects initiated by scholarship recipients, the cycle of giving that was spreading across the country, Maria felt the profound satisfaction that comes from work that truly matters. After the ceremony, as she mingled with scholarship recipients and their families, Maria was approached by a young woman she didn't recognize. "Ms. Gonzalez," the woman said, "my name is Sarah Chen. I was one of your first scholarship recipients from Tennessee, and I wanted to thank you personally. Sarah, I remember you. You wanted to study environmental science. Yes, and I just graduated from UT with my master's degree. I'm starting a job next month with the EPA, working on water quality issues in rural communities. That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Ms. Gonzalez, I wanted you to know that your scholarship didn't just pay for my education. It showed me that people believed in me, that my dreams were worth investing in. That confidence changed everything about how I saw myself and what I thought I could accomplish. Similar conversations happened throughout the evening, confirming what Maria had learned over the past 2 years. The scholarships provided more than financial assistance. They offered validation, hope, and proof that someone believed in these students' potential. Later that evening, George found Maria in the quiet backstage area of the Opry, much like he had at the Ryman 2 years earlier. "You know," he said, settling into a chair beside her, "Tom would have gotten such a kick out of seeing his name on the marquee at the Grand Ole Opry." "Tell me about him again," Maria said. "I never get tired of hearing your stories about your friendship." George smiled, his eyes growing distant with memory. "Tom was the most authentic person I ever knew. He never tried to be anything other than exactly who he was, a Texas ranch hand who loved horses and honest work. When my career took off and everything got complicated, Tom kept me grounded. He'd call me up and tell me stories about his horses or about some ridiculous thing that happened at the feed store. He reminded me where I came from." "And he never asked you for anything?" "Never, not once. That's what made our friendship so precious. He loved me for who I was, not what I could do for him." George paused, looking out at the empty auditorium. "You know what he would have loved most about tonight? Not the fancy venue or the media attention. He would have loved hearing those kids talk about their dreams and their plans to help others. That's the kind of thing that mattered to Tom. Do you think he would have approved of how the foundation has grown? I think he would have been amazed and proud. But I also think he would have told us not to let it go to our heads." George chuckled. Tom had a way of keeping things in perspective. As they prepared to leave the Opry, George turned to Maria with a serious expression. "Maria, I want to ask you something. How would you feel about opening an office in Texas? We've been getting a lot of applications from students there, and I think Tom would have liked the idea of the foundation having roots in his home state." "I think that's a beautiful idea," Maria said. "Are you thinking about a satellite office or something more significant?" "I'm thinking about making it our second headquarters. We could hire local staff, develop partnerships with Texas universities, maybe even create some specialized programs for rural students." Maria's mind began racing with possibilities. "We could focus on agricultural and environmental studies, given the state's economy and challenges." "Exactly. And we could name the Texas office after Tom specifically, the Tom Patterson Rural Education Center." "George, that would be incredible. How soon are you thinking about moving on this?" "I'd like to have it operational within a year, which means I need someone I trust to oversee the development and launch." He looked at her meaningfully. "Any interest in spending some time in Texas?" Maria felt the familiar flutter of excitement and nervousness that had become associated with major opportunities. "You want me to establish the Texas office? I want you to build something special, something that would make Tom proud." The drive home that night was quiet, with Carmen asleep in the passenger seat and Maria's mind buzzing with plans and possibilities. The idea of expanding to Texas felt like a natural evolution of everything they had built, a way to honor Tom's memory while extending their reach to students who needed their help. When they arrived home, Carmen stirred awake. "Mom, I was dreaming about tonight, about all those students and their families. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't decided to help Mr. Strait that night?" "Sometimes," Maria admitted, "but then I remember that helping him wasn't really a decision. It was just who I am. I couldn't have walked away from someone in pain any more than I could have stopped breathing. That's what makes you perfect for this job, Carmen said. You don't do it for recognition or money or career advancement. You do it because you genuinely care about people. I do care. Sometimes I think I care too much. There's no such thing as caring too much, Mom. The world needs more people who care too much, not fewer. As they settled into bed that night, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. From hotel cleaning lady to foundation executive, from worrying about her daughter's college tuition to helping hundreds of students across the country pursue their dreams. It still felt surreal sometimes, but it also felt right, like she had finally found the work she was meant to do. Every scholarship they awarded, every student they helped, every life they touched, it all traced back to that night in the hotel suite when she had chosen compassion over protocol, human connection over professional distance. 3 weeks later, Maria was on a plane to Austin, Texas, tasked with finding office space and beginning the process of establishing the Tom Patterson Rural Education Center. As the plane descended over the Texas landscape, she thought about Tom Patterson, the man whose friendship had inspired everything they were building. She had never met him, but in many ways, he had become her partner in this work. His values of authenticity, hard work, and genuine care for others had become the foundation's guiding principles. His belief in the importance of staying grounded and remembering where you came from influenced every decision they made. The office space Maria found was in a converted warehouse in Austin's non-profit district, with exposed brick walls and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. It felt like the right environment for the kind of work they would be doing, substantial and authentic, without unnecessary frills or pretension. As she stood in the empty space, imagining how it would look once they had staff and students and programs in operation, Maria's phone rang. It was George, calling from Nashville. "How's Texas treating you?" he asked. "It's perfect," Maria said, looking around the space. "I found our office, and I've already had meetings with 3 universities about partnership programs." "That's fantastic. Any interesting students you've met yet?" "Actually, yes. There's a young man named Michael who wants to study veterinary medicine so he can help ranchers care for their livestock. His family has been struggling since they lost most of their cattle to drought, but he's maintained a 4.0 GPA while working full-time to help support them." Sounds like exactly the kind of student Tom would have wanted to help. "That's what I thought too. George, I think this Texas expansion is going to be even more impactful than we imagined." "I'm not surprised. You have a gift for finding the students who will make the most of these opportunities." After hanging up, Maria spent another hour in the empty office space, planning and dreaming about what they would build there. Through the large windows, she could see the Austin skyline and the Texas landscape beyond, and she felt a deep sense of purpose and possibility. That evening, she called Carmen from her hotel room. "How's the adventure going, Mom?" "It's incredible. I think Tom Patterson would have loved this state and these students. Do you ever feel like he's watching over the foundation, like he knows what you're building in his honor?" Maria considered the question seriously. She wasn't particularly religious or mystical, but there had been moments over the past few years when she felt guided by something larger than herself, when decisions that seemed impossible became clear, when the right people appeared at exactly the right time. "I think his values and his friendship with George created something that continues to influence our work," she said finally. "Whether that's him watching over us or just the power of his example, I'm not sure it matters. What matters is that we're building something he would have been proud of." "Mom, I have something to tell you. I've been thinking about my plans after graduation, and I want to join the foundation full-time, not just because it's what you do, but because I believe in the mission. I want to help expand this work to reach even more students." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Are you sure? You have so many options available to you." I'm sure. This work matters, Mom. What we're doing changes lives, and I want to be part of that for the rest of my career. Then I couldn't be prouder. As Maria prepared for sleep that night in her Austin hotel room, she thought about the circle of influence that had brought her to this moment. A grief-stricken man, a compassionate response, a lost job, an impossible dream. And now hundreds of students across America who were pursuing their educations thanks to the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation. Tomorrow, she would continue building the Texas office, expanding their reach and deepening their impact. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel profound gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought her here, for the trust George had placed in her, and for the opportunity to honor Tom Patterson's memory by investing in the dreams of young people who understood the value of hard work and the importance of giving back. The cleaning lady who had comforted a stranger had become an advocate for students across the nation. The single mother who had worried about college tuition was now ensuring that hundreds of other families wouldn't have to face that worry alone. It was more than she had ever dared to dream, and it was exactly the kind of work Tom Patterson would have understood and valued. As Maria drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of gratitude. For second chances, for unexpected friendships, for the power of human kindness to create change that ripples far beyond anything we might imagine. The story that had begun with loss and grief had become one of hope and possibility, proving that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as ordinary encounters with strangers who need our help. And sometimes, when we choose compassion over caution, when we risk our security to serve others, we discover that we've been preparing for opportunities we never knew existed, building skills we never knew we had, becoming people we never thought we could be. Maria Gonzalez, executive director of the Tom Patterson Memorial Foundation, slept peacefully that night in Austin, Texas, knowing that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to change lives, new students to serve, and new ways to honor the memory of a man she had never met, but whose values had become the foundation of her life's work. The circle was complete, but the impact would continue for generations to come.